Hi, welcome back to Making Action Happen, the show that we do for our Action 22 community and people around the world.
Yep.
I'm Sarah
I'm
Blackhurst.
Brian McCain.
So we have actually a really cool show for you today. We don't have any guests, but one of my very favorite things about Brian, and I make him do it all the time, is tell me a story. If you're a friend of mine, you'll remember that I always will ask somebody, this is the way I greet you. What good stories do you have for me? And so I do this with Brian all the time. It's one of my favorite things. So we're going to talk about a couple of cool things and then a couple of crazy things. But first, we've had a really hectic week this week. We were in the San Luis Valley yesterday. We gave testimony on, I gave testimony on Senate Bill 200, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And we've just had a bunch going on because, it's the halftime for the session. And so this has come up. What we're going to talk about first is a project that Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Bennett have introduced legislation to support.
Not yet. It's Representative Nagoose and Buck started it. And I think the senators will have their companion bill on it soon.
Oh, okay, cool. So tell us what this project is, because this is actually really cool. And when I first heard about it, I wasn't sure, but you set me straight.
So 2007-ish, I worked for Senator Wayne Allard. And in Colorado, we have the Granada War Relocation Center. We refer to it as Camp Amache. And what it was during World War II, they set up internment camps around the country. I don't know how many there were total, but it was basically they took Japanese Americans. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the government said they may have loyalties to Japan. So they set up these relocation camps. They were internment camps, basically. And there's a lot that goes on with that, where property was seized, Japanese property was seized, and they put them in these camps and basically locked them up because they didn't know if they can trust them. But in Colorado, we have the Granada War Relocation Center, also known as Camp Amache. And I'll just read it from here, just the introduction. It was a Japanese American concentration camp located in southeast Colorado, about a mile west of the small farming community of Granada. Going back to my Senator Allard days, we tried to pass a bill. We introduced legislation that would basically make this camp, which is so important to the history of America and Colorado, good and bad reasons, in 2006 and 2007. And it would basically make the Amache Camp a National Historic Site. Unfortunately, this was at the end of Senator Allard's tenure in the Senate. And we got no traction on it. Like, we thought it was a slam dunk. We're like, this is so important to Colorado. We need to let people know that this is here. This needs to be recognized nationally. But it didn't go anywhere. Now, again, Representative Nagoose and Representative Buck, they introduced HR 2497, which is the Amache National Historic Site Act.
Okay.
And what this would do, if it's signed into law, and again, we're waiting on the Senate version of the bill, which I think is either happening now or will soon, because I know Senator Hickenlooper's office has been engaged with us on this.
Right.
It would make it a National Historic Site. And with that comes funding. It will preserve it. It will make it one of these places in the United States that's very important to American history. And just even the tourism alone in the area. And I hate to put tourism with an intern camp, but people need to see this. And when it first came to us, Sarah's like, oh, that's an intern. Why would we want to do something like that? But it's the same thing as like the Holocaust Museum. There's things that have happened for reasons in history that we need to recognize and we need to be educated about. This camp, this was a result of Executive Order 9066. Over in 1942, 120,000 Japanese Americans were evacuated and placed into temporary assembly centers before being transferred to more permanent and isolated relocation centers like Granada. This was run by the War Relocation Authority, the government body responsible for the administration of the incarceration program. Granada, or Camp Amache, was one of 10 such camps, the only one to be built on private land. The campsite covered 10,000 acres, of which only 640 acres was used for residential, community, and administrative buildings, while the rest was devoted to agricultural projects. And this also comes into Colorado because since it was built on private land, they used eminent domain, and there was some controversy with it. I think some of the people sold, and then one of them had to be taken by the government through eminent domain. But in Colorado, we also have Pinyon Canyon, which is another site of controversy where the military trains, and there's always this talk to expand it, to keep it, to get rid of it. Through eminent domain, the military needs more land to train. Right. It would have to use eminent domain for these ranches, or are they going to sell? So this is like an issue in Colorado that's actually gone on in many different cases, which is.
Now, have they made internment camps national historic sites in any place else? Because this certainly wasn't the only one that they had in the U.S. during World War II.
No. So I believe, and I'm just looking at these notes, in 2006, President George W. Bush signed H.R. 1492 into law, guaranteeing $38 million in federal money to restore the Granada Relocation Center and 9 other former Japanese American internment camps. I don't think they're sites, but they are they're historic sites.
So
it's different than what they're trying to do. This is like the next big step into making this codified, that this is a federal, site, and this is why it's here. Interestingly enough about Camp Amache, they had the Japanese Americans there. And again, these are Americans. These are not Japanese citizens living in America. These are Americans. They had machine gun towers, and this is all off the top of my head from talking to people, but they had machine gun nests. They were never manned. Very rarely did they actually carry guns. The camp, you had doctors, lawyers, farmers that were Japanese American that worked as a doctor. They even had a police force that was run by the Japanese. But in all these cases, they always had an American, non-Japanese person in charge, and their wages were far more than the Japanese.
Right.
Like the American doctor is getting paid way more than the Japanese American doctor in this. But
and the people that were in the camp, they would go to other places and work. They would bus them, and that they would.
Well, so the idea was that they would be self-sufficient. So they had the farmland around it. They grown their own food. But interestingly enough, the community, there was some people that didn't like it. And there's multiple political reasons why. Like some of the poor farmers and ranchers in the towns around said, like, hey, they're getting more than we have, because this is at the tail end of the Depression.
Right.
So they thought, oh, we're catering to the Japanese Americans, but we're not taking care of American citizens. But that was rare. That was a small percentage. The actual towns, they started carrying Japanese products. It's capitalism. They're going to sell. They have customers. And the people in the camp that were interned there actually had passes. They'd go to town on the weekends. They'd go shopping. They would go out. But the interesting thing is they formed a football team.
Yes.
They formed a high school football team. And supposedly this is kind of up in there. They were undefeated, or they lost one game. One noteworthy event was when Amache football team played the undefeated football team from Holly, Colorado, which was located 11 miles east of Amache on Highway 50. The game was unique because Holly actually agreed to come to the camp and play Amache on their home field. So they actually played in the camp here. But one of the Holly team players was actually Roy Romer, who ended up becoming governor of Colorado.
Right.
The Amache team won the game by a score of 7-0. And the only touchdown coming from Amache was through a trick play. And so technically, the Amache high school football team can be claimed to be undefeated on their own field, which is huge. They also and this isn't even in my notes, but you can find pictures of it. The Amache camp had a division of the Boy Scouts.
Oh.
And when they met and they did everything, it was the Boy Scouts of America. They flew the American flag. They did their Boy Scout duties all in the camp. And afterwards, when they shut these down, and if you go on Wikipedia and just look it up, there's like 40 people that came just from the Amache camp here that went on to do great things in America, from politicians to doctors to professors. He wasn't here, but he was in a different one. But George Takei from Star Trek, he was in an internment camp
in Alabama or something. Right?
I think it was California. I forget. Yeah. But the thing is, some of these people, the Japanese Americans that were there, they actually stayed here in the community, and they stayed in Colorado. And growing up, my grandfather's house, the guy that lived behind him was a Japanese American, and he was actually interned there at the camp. And I remember my grandpa telling me about it, and I just didn't get it. I was like 6,
right.
I was like, why would they lock people up in a camp? Like,
yeah,
this is bad. But I had the privilege of speaking to him 2 times, and that was it. And he had a beautiful garden. We were over by City Park in Pueblo, if you're familiar with that area. And there wasn't a house behind it. So it was just like this empty lot in the middle of this gorgeous neighborhood. And the guy behind, he had this beautiful garden. So as a kid, I'd go out there and he'd be like, hey, do you want an apple? Do you want to do this? Because the house was built on an old apple farm.
Gotcha.
Or apple orchard.
Right.
And so I kind of, looking back, I wish I would have spoke more to him and remembered what he told me. But he was interned in the camp here in Colorado, and he stayed here, and he had he had a successful life. I think he was ended up being a doctor, and he retired, and that's when I talked to him. But
so there's a really sweet, and I think it's like a Hallmark movie or something, with Carrie Russell, where that camp is featured. It's not about the camp, but it's featured in that movie. That's a lot of fun. So we really like that they're going to do this. I think it's important for us. When you explained it to me, I was like, why would we do this? And then you explained to me the importance of really remembering so we don't repeat mistakes of the past.
Yes. And just, I don't know much about this, but you had the Nisi troops, and the Army had a restriction against the Nisi. Basically, they listed them as enemy aliens, ineligible for active service after Pearl Harbor. But the Nisi were second generation Japanese, but they were Americans. A lot of them in these camps volunteered to go fight. And it was interesting because they would go to Japan to fight for America. And I think that, it was almost to a point where we were policing the American troops to look out for the Nisi. But, that there's one division that the Nisi fought in, and it's called the Purple Heart Division. And it was the most Purple Hearts awarded to any Army division, and it was a Japanese American division.
Oh, wow.
And at the camp at Amache, there is a memorial for the Nisi soldiers that volunteered, and they weren't forced. These people volunteered to go fight for what they believed in. And in a time when, America was kind of not doing maybe the right thing, they were locking American citizens up in internment camps, they still believed in America so much that they chose to volunteer to fight against Japan in World War II.
And while their families were in internment camps, they still did that.
And while their families were interned by the government they were fighting for. And that's important. And we have to remember this. We have to keep our history sacred and make sure we're aware of what we did not do, what happened, and why it happened. And that's why this bill is so important. This is why when I worked on it in Senator Allard's office, this was a huge thing. And we thought it was a slam dunk, but at the time they didn't, I guess the other senators didn't think so. But it is a breath of fresh air to see Nagoose and Buck introduce this, and we'll see the Senate side do it as well.
Right.
And this kind of goes to the saying, stay the course. If you have a goal that's right, stay the course, because eventually, if it is the right thing to do, it'll get there.
Happen.
And going back to 2006-07, when I worked on this initially, it's staying the course. And I'm so thrilled to see this bill come up. And it's a great thing for Colorado. It's a great thing for Japanese Americans. It's a great thing for our veterans. And it's just an important part of history that we can't forget. And this will just help lock it in for everybody to be aware of.
So Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper are going to be having a roundtable discussion in the next few days. I think it's tomorrow, and we'll be in the middle of our transportation discussion that we're having tomorrow, so we won't be able to get on there. But they're really wanting to know what everybody's thinking about this, and seeing if there's any comments or any thoughts on this. So if you do have something, we'll send it on to both of their offices. You can email us at show@action22.org. Again, that's show@action22.org, and let us know about that.
And to follow on to that, I got to give a shout out to Kip Scherutz, because he's very involved with this, or monitoring it. But we have Japanese consul general located in Denver. And I've met with her, and I would like to possibly invite her on the show. And if we could make that happen, I think that would be a great discussion.
That would. I would love that.
To see her thoughts on it, and how she feels about it, and just go through the history. And I've met with her a couple times, and she's amazing.
And what a beautiful history that is. I love that they're going to do this. Now that I understand it better, I love that.
Beautiful and tragic.
Beautiful and tragic.
You can't really say beautiful, but it is beautiful.
But it is beautiful, and there's tragedy to it, and there's a lot to it. So we had, everybody's talking about Senate Bill 200 right now.
Yes.
The hearing was earlier this week. Senate Bill 200 was greenhouse gas emission reduction and environmental justice. There's been a whole lot of pushback on this particular bill. It did pass out of the committee in a split 4-3 vote. So it's going on to finance. We've talked about on the show before, but this was one of those that when we sent it out to the Action 22 Board of Directors to take a position on it, it was one of the fastest responses I'd ever seen when we do that. And it was unanimously and passionately opposed to this.
And that's why you testified against it, correct?
And I testified against it. There was a whole lot of testimony. It went late into the evening. I think they finally finished with testimony. It was 9:37. I remember looking at my clock and going, it's 9:37. And so I think that the sponsors of the bill are trying to do something important. They're trying to do something that they'd like to see replicated across the nation. But here's my issue. My issue with this is they're trying to pass legislation that would really affect Coloradans in the negative way. And they're trying to do it for folks in complete other states. So the decision that they're making for Coloradans is a decision that would be made, doesn't really affect Coloradans in anything but a negative way. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that they want to do, that they would do, is shut down all the coal factories, completely shut them down, or coal plants, sorry, all coal plants, way earlier than what was originally decided. So there's two parts to this. One is that there's a tremendous amount of really positive, really great work that was done by this state in the last couple of years. Goals were set. Xcel Energy is the one that owns Comanche power plant that's here in Pueblo. So this is right where we live. All the really great work that was done to set very aggressive goals, and everybody that came to the table and really gave up a lot to get all of this done, this totally disregards that. It totally disregards the really great work that was done. And in fact, the governor has come out against this bill, and the Energy Office testified in opposition to this bill. And it's for that reason, because it was a huge and heavy lift, and everybody gave everything that they could give to do that. But not only that, is they did what they could do as far as the technology had set it up. Now, we're going to unwind all that. We're going to take that all back. So I'll tell you an example. And being a minority woman in an underserved region, where I run the organization, I do all of that. So I check all the boxes of what they're talking about. I can tell you that this underserved area, that's what they're trying to serve, that would be so much more detrimental. And here's why. If they close the power plant, if they close Comanche 3,
earlier
earlier than
it is scheduled to close. That's the thing.
It is scheduled to close. And originally it was scheduled to close in what, 2070 or something?
I think it was 2070. It was.
It was way down. But when they did this energy roadmap a couple of years ago, and everybody bought in and everybody came to the table, they said, you know what? We can close these other two down, but we have to leave this open because the technology hasn't caught up. We don't have the transmission. We don't have any way to replace that coal and that energy production. We cannot do it, but this is the best that we can do. And so they said they're going to shut it down in 2040, right? Comanche was going to be shut down in 2040.
They said they could do it by 2040. And what this does is 2030 or earlier.
And this does 2030 or earlier. So all of those jobs that they were trying to transition, and we call it just transition. And there's all these things that we say that we're going to replace that, but it's going to cost the county of Pueblo $15 million a year.
Yeah.
And there's debt that Pueblo County has taken out in order to do all of these really great community building projects. And now you've just said, we're taking 15 million away from you, and there's nothing to backfill that. There's no way to do that. In addition to that, it would tremendously drive up the cost for consumers in this area when we do that. So not only will there's not a reliable setup to do it, they didn't do it in a way that was productive. They just say, we want to do something and it's environmental justice and we have to do this. It flies in the face of reason. What they're saying that they're trying to do has already been done. And they got up and Senator Donovan talked at great length about her frustration that things hadn't moved as quickly as they had. But if you look at the work that was done, the concessions that were made, it was incredibly fast. And it's moving very quickly, and there's every indication that we'll meet those goals or more. But what they really wanted to do, and what we heard in the committee, is they want to mandate that that's happening, and it's already happening. And so there was a lot of frustration and fear that what they're trying to do will actually derail everything, that's all the really great work that's being done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Senate Bill 200. I don't even know what else to say about it.
No, I would throw this in there. Pueblo has committed to being a green energy city.
Yes.
And most of the county by a certain timeline, which was ahead of everybody else. And they signed a pledge with the governor's office and everything. And this coming in, it's like, we're already doing that, but what this will do is just impact Pueblo negatively. And Pueblo County came out against it as well.
Yes, they
which,
did.
If you look at it like a county and city that's very focused on climate action, going green, 100% renewables by this time, and then they came out in opposition of this bill. So that's saying something. And it's a huge financial impact to the county. And I just don't see how this could be good for Pueblo in any way. And we're already going there. No matter how you feel about, coal versus renewables, et cetera, Pueblo's already making that transition, and they have been for years now. And, Comanche 3, it's a clean coal-fired plant. It's not like dumping stuff in the river. It's not polluting the environment. There's not a black cloud coming out of it right now.
Yeah. So the attainment that we talk about on the greenhouse emissions and all of those things, let me say one thing that was repeated over and over again in the hearing was that there was a trust factor that they talked about, and they don't trust utilities unless it's in the statute, that they don't trust them to actually reach their goals if it's not in the statute. Not one person recognized the fact, not one of the people that said that recognized the fact that the Xcel's energy plan that was incredibly aggressive was put into statute, and they got pushback from other folks in the industry because the idea is the technology that is required to do this heavy lift hasn't completely been created yet. And you have to say, okay, there has to be some estimation on this, and there's no solid in a very dynamic industry that is moving in incredible rate. So we're talking about trying to put solid things onto a dynamic industry that is already so regulated that they need the space to make this work. And what this says is, we don't trust you to do that. We don't think you can do that. And we're going to force you into something that is really unattainable. And it flies in the face of all goal-making rules.
Yeah. And another thing, I talked to some renewable people, a few of them the past few days. And one thing that they said was like, it actually kind of makes them a little nervous too, because all the weight of this energy generation is going to go on them. And they're like, we can't handle this right now. Like, we're close, but this is a lot to pick up at once if this goes through. And then we're going to see this timely shift, like super fast shift to solar, wind, even gas, anything. They're like, we may not be able to pick that up right away, and everybody's going to expect us to. So they're a little nervous about it too. Not saying they don't want it to happen, but
and the transmission infrastructure.
And transmission's another thing. You know, we're looking, just talking today about the Valley. There's some good ideas coming out. There's transmission modernization of the infrastructure and lines that we're seeing, and both through legislation and through programs. But there's still areas like the San Luis Valley where they don't have a plan yet to modernize that. And if you're talking solar, like the Valley's the place to be. They just don't have the lines.
They don't.
Eventually they will. It will get there, and there's a push for that. But right now they don't have the transmission down there. And when they do, it'll be great.
It'll be great.
But right now it's not.
Before we go to break, I do want to leave it on a really positive. We were really excited, and we want to give props on this. So a big, huge high five to the House Ag, Livestock, and Water Committee, who just named Representative Mark Caitlin, who is a Republican, to as a vice chair. And this is a big deal because this is unprecedented that a member of the minority party would be named to a leadership role of any kind in a Dem-controlled committee. Well done. You guys are doing it right when you try to bring everybody together. So well done, Ag Committee.
And with that, we'll go to break and come back and talk about UFOs.
UFOs, yay! Hi, welcome back to Making Action Happen. I'm super excited to talk about UFOs. Okay, so full disclosure, Brian and I actually end up talking about UFOs quite a bit in this office. I am totally bought in. I'm an absolute believer. This is some of my favorite stories. So my dad served was in the Coast Guard, and he served in the Bermuda Triangle. So I was raised on these kinds of stories. So I was a believer before I met you, but I'm super excited for you to talk about UFOs.
Okay. I'm gonna geek out. We're gonna do something fun. Everything we're doing is like doom and gloom, blah, blah, blah.
We're tired.
So
we need a break.
This is a break. So a few years ago, you saw a video release. It was like a couple videos, the Tic Tac and the gimbal. And this was from Commander Dave Fravor. What had happened was he was a flight squadron commander in the Navy. And they were flying, doing exercises, and they get this hit, says, hey, go check this out. So I think, I forget where this is off the coast of, but anyway, they're flying from an aircraft carrier, whatever. There's boats, and they're like, we're picking this up. So they get out there, and you could look up the video, just Google Tic Tac or gimbal video, and they see this thing. And so some of the reports, they say certain things, and it's like, oh, this was just an optics problem, a software problem. This is around 2008, I believe.
Okay.
So he's been talking about it because since those videos were leaked, the New York Times actually confirmed it, and the Pentagon confirmed it. Like, yeah, this is legitimate. We don't know what these are. We're referring to them as UAPs. They have the ATIP program, which was kind of like, it doesn't exist and it does. And now they're saying, yeah, we have this program that's funded that investigates these UAPs. That's a UFO. So
Okay.
instead of calling it a UFO, they call it a UAP.
What is UAP? What does it stand for?
Unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Oh, okay.
So
That's a cooler name, by the way.
yeah, so once they confirm it, you know, he's like doing the circuit and speaking, and he never even says it's aliens. He's like, I don't know what it is. It could be aliens, could be, you know, enemy aircraft.
Yeah.
We don't know. But they basically intercept this thing. They fly around it. They watch it like do a maneuver where it goes from I don't know, like 30,000 feet to 0 feet in then less than a second, and then it shoots off. So then they come back to their carrier group, and it's there, and it actively showed up where they were supposed to go, and they see it again, and it jams their radar and stuff. So this video gets leaked out.
Okay.
So now he has a pass to talk about it. The Pentagon comes out like, yep, it's real. We can confirm.
Wait. Okay, so the original video happened in 2008.
Yeah, this was filmed in 2008.
Okay, it's 2000, and then
it
when
was
did the
leaked out in 2018 or 19.
Okay.
And it was out there, but nobody said anything about it. And then the New York Times broke an article, I think in 2019, saying, yep, this is legit. Or maybe it was 2020. They said, this is a real thing. The video is accurate. It hasn't been tampered with. This is a real video.
Okay.
Which there's a comedian that kind of says, he jokes, he said, yeah, 2020 was so bad that the government said there's aliens and nobody really cared. Like,
I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that meme.
So he starts talking and he's doing these interviews with people. And he's like, yeah, but we heard stories about stuff like this all the time. Nobody would talk about it because you want to be like the freaky dude that, oh, I saw a UFO. Like, you know, I'm a decorated fighter pilot. I can't be claiming that there's a UFO. I'll just be made fun of, or I won't get promoted, or I'll get kicked out.
Okay.
But he tells a story of one of his buddies that was on a Navy ship. And there's no video of this. Well, till a couple days ago, there's something similar to it. But so this guy, they were pulling up a drone. It was basically an underwater drone. And for anybody that doesn't know, you know, there's this fiber optic cable that goes under the ocean. And there's always been this game of the Russians like, oh, we're doing research down here. And the Americans like, oh, Noah's here doing research, but they're like going down and tapping this cable and spying on each other and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, just good old fashioned Cold War spying.
Cable tapping, yes.
But anyway, so there's this naval ship. They have a drone down there. It's probably looking at this cable from what he said. And everybody's standing around. They're watching it come up because what else are you going to do on a boat? You're going to sit there and watch this
the
drone come up. The ship's going to pick it up.
There's going to be something cool.
Then something huge came up and grabbed the drone and pulled it underwater and was gone. Yeah. And again, this is just a hearsay story that
okay.
His buddy told him that he talked about. So fast forward a little more. So now you have these people coming out like, oh yeah, like, you know, I was on this ship and we'd see that stuff all the time. We're sitting out there and we'd have these things come in, pick them up on radar. We could see them. They would do their thing and then they would fly off. And that was it, or disappear. And then some people started saying, and this popped up in the past few months, it's like transmedial crap. I forget how they phrase it, but it's something that they track that flies above the water and underwater at the same speed with no sonic boom. And the Navy actually said, yes, these objects were tracked and they went hypersonic or supersonic with no sonic boom, which is huge.
Yeah.
Also, the Navy said, like, yeah, we track these things and there's no visible sign of propulsion. So that's another one. So there's no like jet exhaust coming out. If you look at the video, it's an infrared, there's nothing.
Same thing when they're under the water?
Yeah, it just goes a transmedial transfer or something. So it like basically goes underwater to above water and back down just as fast, up and down. So then you have some of these, like George Knapp is a guy that's always done like the Area 51, Bob Lazar stuff.
Right.
And some people say he's a kook, but he is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He just likes UFOs. It's like kind of cool. Like, and then you have another guy, Jeremy Corbell, I think is his name, and he does all these documentaries. With that, you're like, yeah, you're making money off of it. So of course you want to pump up the UFO things. But these guys, George Knapp specifically, has been leaking, like getting these leaked videos, photos, and stuff. So again, you go back, this thing happened in 2008, the video was leaked 2019-ish, and then New York Times talks to the Pentagon and they confirm this is a real video. So then this other video comes out, and it's like a F-18, naval F-18 flying, and they take a picture of this thing with their cell phone. Like, click, there's something floating there. And everybody calls it the Batman balloon. It looks like a kid's balloon floating in there.
Okay.
And then a few weeks ago, they said, oh, no, there's more pictures. And then they released some more. And it's like a weird circle, like almost looks like a lens flare, but it's not. Like it looks like the clouds, like this energy circle. And then a blimp. And the blimp, I mean, you could look these up. It looks like a blimp, a silver blimp with like maybe two things on the top and bottom. And they said that thing just stayed there, wasn't moving in the wind. We circled it for a long time, and then it just like
They
disappeared.
circled it with what?
Jets. They're in fighter jets.
So they're in fighter jets, and
Yeah.
they're watching this thing, and they're circling
The
it.
picture of it is from the pilot's like iPhone 7. He took a picture, he just like held up his iPhone. And there was a memo that the DOD and the Navy said, like, hey, if you guys see these, if you have your iPhone, take pictures of it. We want to look at this.
So they were so cognizant of this going on, they actually instructed their pilots to take pictures with their iPhones.
Yes.
I have more questions, but keep going.
Now, they're not saying this is aliens or anything. They just, like, Senator Mark Rubio, during the last COVID package that passed, Senator Rubio said, like, hey, this is kind of scary. I'm seeing this stuff in the news. Like, we need to figure out what this is, because they're only going to like military places, right? They're like, this is one, it's either a foreign aircraft that has technology that we do not have, or have anything close to it. It's just a weird phenomenon that's, it could be a natural thing, but they don't know what it is, or it's aliens, is basically what he said. And then he went in. He goes, like, I kind of hope it's aliens, because I don't want this to be like, a Chinese or Russian or North Korean.
Right. They'd rather it be aliens
than doing this.
So it's kind of an Oxen's razor.
Yes. So then this is the controversial one. There's a night vision video.
Okay.
That the Pentagon came out and confirmed that it was taken from a naval warship.
Okay.
And it's basically a dude, like, if anybody is in the military, night vision, you could have a scope or the goggles. And then if you look at videos, it's like people holding their camera up to the lens to see it. It's not a camera. It's like, you can see that it's just held up.
Right.
And there's like these weird pyramid shaped objects floating around, but they're also blinking lights. And they said, oh yeah, these pyramid drones came to the ship, and we can confirm that we didn't know what they were.
To an aircraft carrier? Yeah,
I think it might've been like, it was some warship. I don't think it was an aircraft carrier in this one. But the thing is, when I saw that one, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So if anyone's familiar with night vision, you have a lens cap on it. So if you want to look through it and there's still light, enough light that you don't want to open up the lens all the way, but still see. A lot of these night vision goggles, like binoculars, they'll have pinholes in them. So it could be daytime or low light, and you still have the cap on, and you could look through it because there's a pinhole and you can still see. And this it's kind of funny, because there was like a picture of President Bush and also President Obama, like, holding up binoculars, and they have the lens caps, and it's like, well, he doesn't even know the lens caps are. It's like, no, those are low light sensitive. So when it's light out, you keep the lens caps on and you can still see. First thing I thought is there is a triangle, like, on the lens cap to let the light in. It's a triangle. I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is just a lens flare from an airplane or a drone, and it makes it look like a triangle. Oh. That's what I thought. That one, I'm like, that's nothing. But then the Navy said, like, no, we didn't know what these are. And then this week they're kind of like recanting their statement. They're like, well, we're not going to comment on it anymore. Like, we could have been wrong. It was filmed by a Navy person, but whatever.
Okay. So I've got to back up for a second. So for years and years and years, anybody that had these stories would just be written off as kooks. One of the stories my dad told me was about, because he was a boatswain's mate, and they had a new guy on the boat, and he was on the night watch, and he's freaking out, and goes to my dad and says, he's seeing these lights, and they're watching, and they watch him for a long time. And the kid's like, I don't know what to do. And the standard was, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to say anything. You're not going to do anything. It's not worth it. Okay. So now fast forward, however many years later, and all of a sudden the Pentagon is saying, yes, this is a thing.
Yeah, they're saying it's a thing, and they're trying to be more transparent about it. But here's the other thing. So in the COVID bill that I was speaking about, there is a provision in it that said by June 6th that the DoD has to hold a public hearing on UAPs or UFOs. So all the UFO people are like, well, June 6th, they got to release all these documents and do this stuff.
So they have to release the documents, or they're going to accept all the footage and stuff?
No, they're going to
people
release
bring
it. They
in?
have footage. They have a lot of footage. The former Secretary of Defense, the former head of the CIA came out within the past 2 weeks saying, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And this is only the tip of the iceberg, that we have been watching it. We don't know what it is. And if you think this is crazy, there's going to be more crazy stuff. But the problem is, I don't think they're going to like do a public hearing and just be like, here's everything we got, which the COVID bill says they have to do.
Okay.
But the reason for that, and I respect this, is that there's there's intel gathering.
I was going to say, yeah.
Instruments. Like, you don't want to release like, oh, this is how an F-18 or an F-22 can track something. So they really got to scrub that. They don't want to give any intel to our foreign adversaries on it. But they have admitted, like, there is a program that's looking at this. This thing happens across the board. We are aware of it, and it's going on, and we have absolutely no idea what this is. So there's another interesting kind of theory from some of the military people, ex-military intelligence guys.
Sure.
They think that these are simple balloons and drones, and they're laughing because they're like, look, we have all this high-tech sensors, like we're the most high-tech military on Earth, and we're being fooled by just simple Walmart drones and kids' balloons. And a part of me is like, okay, sure, I could see that. Sure. But at the same time, when you listen to Commander Fravor talk about this stuff, he's like, no, we saw it with our eyes. We tracked it go like from, 30,000 feet to 1 foot within less than a second, and then off, and it's on our radar. So I'm like, yeah,
that's
I don't think
pretty
that's
elaborate.
And one of my friends is like, no, these are drones. It's the Chinese messing with us. I hope it's not the Chinese messing with us. But there was another one. So you have the night vision one where the Navy's kind of like backing off. They're like, yeah, we're not saying anything. It's probably drones, and it's like a lens flare, blah, 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 whatever. Right. And I kind of agree with that, because if you look at the video, it's like these triangle things, but it looks like a lens flare, and they have lights on them. I'm like, well, why would like a weird, I don't know, alien aircraft have the same lights blinking on it that every human aircraft does, right? Like, what's the point? But there's another one, and this was taken from, I forget the ship, but they tracked one, and this is just within the past 2 days that they came out with this. So if you look at the pictures, they're tracking it. It's like on a gun cam. So, it's like infrared, black and white. There's like the gun lines and stuff. And you see this thing, and it's just real quick photos, because this thing was moving so fast. So you figure like they're probably filming it at like 60 frames per second. So there's like, it's a dot here, they're tracking it, a dot here over the water, a dot here, and then it goes in the water. And supposedly they still could track it in the water. How? And just sonar, like they knew something went in there. They saw this thing go like,
so they saw the thing
like instantaneously go underwater, still going just as fast and disappearing.
Okay. And then they started tracking with sonar.
Just for like a second, they knew it was in the water.
Okay.
And then supposedly, and this is what came out yesterday, today, is that they dispatched a submarine because they thought it was a crashed aircraft. So the story is that, yeah, they sent a submarine out and ships out to find this thing because they didn't know what it was. And now keep in mind, all this time, the most important weapon development in the history of like the nations right now is what's called a hypersonic cruise missile.
Okay, talk about that for a second.
So a hypersonic cruise missile is basically a cruise missile or a missile that goes so fast, there is no way to stop it. There's not even a way to track its trajectory. You're talking something that's going like Mach 7, faster than anything that we have.
That's a little terrifying.
And this is what you saw China and Russia kind of like, we have a missile defense system. They're like, well, we have hypersonic cruise missiles that the missile defense system can't stop.
We have a Hulk, yeah.
And they go so fast that they don't even have a payload. So right now you have a cruise missile, it shoots, you fire it off, it goes like, I don't know, 100 miles or however long, and it has a payload on it. So when it hits, it blows up. So it's got like a bomb on it. And then, flies smart to the target, boom, blows up. Hypersonic missiles go so fast that they don't need a payload. They're going so fast, just the energy from the speed it's traveling creates like
It's a
larger
gigantic
explosion.
bullet.
Yeah, because it's basically all the energy. Anybody that was like an artillery person knows that, you fire a bullet this big at this speed, it's
Right.
the bullet it's the release of the energy. When it stops, it blows it up. So why the military and the DoD thinks this is so important to track these things is like, is this a hypersonic cruise missile? Like, are we seeing, Russia, China, North Korea, anybody? Heck, there's even people saying, oh no, this is like the Air Force messing with the Navy, which I also like that too. I also like to think that if the Air Force had something like this, they're probably messing with the Navy.
So I don't have I think it's entirely believable that arms, different branches would mess with each other.
Oh,
because I mean, they have a sense of humor. I have a really hard time.
Well, it's not even a sense of humor. It's like, okay, the Air Force is developing something internally, and they say we need to test this.
We're going to test it. We're going to test it on the Navy.
The Navy has the best sensors, radar, etc. What better way to test something than to fly it over a Navy ship to see what comes out of it, if they can actually detect it, if they see it, if they report it. So, and
they're certainly not, if that's the case, they're certainly not going to say, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. But another interesting aspect in this whole thing is the F-22, F-35, like we're on the 6th generation fighters.
Okay.
So you have like the F-16s, those are like 4th and 5th. The newer stuff, it's like the F-22, F-35. I forget what the Russian and Chinese one, it's like the Sukhova, so I forget. There's like a name for it. They all look the same. You see fighter jets and they look like an F-22 or F-35. That's like the newest generation. So that generation is like 20 years old, actually. We're just getting the planes now. But the Air Force came out a couple months ago and said, oh yeah, we have a 7th generation fighter. We've already built it and tested it. So yeah, we're good. And then last week, the Air Force did a press release about, this is the future of the Air Force. And they actually had a picture of this weird triangle craft, the artwork in it. And so they're saying like, no, we already have the next fighter plane. We've built it and tested it.
Okay, so I want to back up for just a second. So Marco Rubio put in the COVID bill that the Pentagon had to come out and talk about
a public hearing.
Have a public hearing.
Yes.
So a public hearing where so that's like a Senate hearing where everybody can be there.
Well, I mean, you could watch it.
Like you can watch it, but it's not.
Yeah,
like it's not just a closed door.
It's
hearing.
like any hearing you see. Go on C-SPAN,
right.
You can watch
so
hearings all day.
They can have a public. Yeah.
It's a public hearing on UFOs, or they call it UAPs and the ATIP program.
Right. So my question is this: if this is Air Force, like Air Force technology, next generation, then why didn't they just say that? Why didn't they just tell Senator, come here?
Maybe they have, or maybe the Air Force is like, yeah, we don't gotta say that. So the Air Force also, most people don't realize this, but the Air Force has a space plane, and it's been flying for years. And they even tease it. They're like, oh, the space plane's up. Can you track it? We're not saying what it does. And amateur astronomers have been tracking the space plane. They knew it was in orbit for like a year and a half, and they knew it took off. The Air Force released photos of it, but nobody knows what it does. Nobody knows why it's up there. But the Air Force said, yeah, we have a space plane. And this is at the time when you have like, Elon Musk and people like, oh, we're going to go to space in a plane and stuff. The Air Force has been flying a space plane for 6 years now, and they admit it. They won't say what it is.
They won't, or what it does.
They've shared pictures of it, and people have seen it land. So they're very secretive about this stuff. And
by the way, I'm okay with them developing that. I think it's great. I think it's they don't need to give us any information that would put anybody in jeopardy.
But take all that. This is all new, right? So this is like within the past few years.
Right.
That Commander Fravor video, the Tic Tac and the gimbal video.
Yeah.
That was like 2008. Maybe it was 2006. This was almost 15, 20 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So, and some of this other stuff is now. So like I can understand like, oh yeah, it's like weird drone technology.
Right.
But this is way older. The initial video that leaked out was way older, And we could go into like, we're running out of time, but
we're running out of time.
From World War II seeing these things. But anyway, that's my UFO speech today.
So I got to ask you before we go, are you a believer or not?
I'm agnostic on it. I don't
Oh
know.
my Lanta. That's not a belief. That's an excuse.
I just think it's interesting and fun.
It's wildly interesting and fun. And I appreciate so much the break. So tomorrow we are going to be having, and if you get our emails, you'll get all the stuff that we're going to do on Facebook Live. We're going to be talking with the director of CDOT and also with the Senate Majority Leader Stephen Finberg about the transportation funding proposal that has been introduced, and have all your questions. You can send us questions and we'll ask them, or you can go on the Facebook Live, on the Action 22 Facebook Live and submit your questions there. Hey, Chad Borthman, I know you're listening, and I'm sorry that we ran out of time, but I promise we'll have you on at some point to talk about your crop circle adventures. Join us next week when I ask a lot of overly complicated questions. And Brian McCain tells us which A-list celebrity did a cover for one of his songs that he wrote. We will see you next week. Thank you.